Well, 2020 can't get over soon enough, right? We want to thank everyone for coming tonight to honor a most amazing lady, our matriarch, Marianne Foral. I want to also take time to acknowledge the flowers that were delivered. I would especially like to give a special shout out to the following people who sent them. The makers of Ho-Hos, Bacardi Rum, M&M's, Sunny D, Folgers Instant Coffee, and Famous Amos Cookies. Chocolate chip and pecans, right, Pat? On the top shelf. We also want to give a special thanks to all the nurses and aides of the Visiting Nurses Association, especially Kathy, Stephanie, and Michelle, who helped care for Grandma. Marianne, Gam Gam, wife, Bobby, daughter, Mrs. Foral, mother, great-grandma, sister, Aunt Mary. While I'm up here talking for the next hour, I'm just going to refer to her in what I think was her greatest role, Grandma Foral. So I was able to compile some stories that family members shared with me, and I'd like to share just a few of them with you. It's really not an hour, it's like 35 minutes. But before I do that, I want to share a story that Grandma recently shared with me. So about 2 weeks ago, Grandma Foral said that she wanted to see her two favorite grandchildren. So Jamie and I picked up a shake and a roast beef sandwich for her and went down to talk with her. Now I should point out that Alyssa and Ellie Mae were busy that night, so that's why Jamie and I went. We asked Grandma Foral if she had any memories that she wanted to share with us. One memory from her childhood that she shared was the time her brother Jim put her in some type of wagon, pushed her down a hill, and almost killed her. She didn't really finish the story, Uncle Jim. Must have traumatized her because she didn't want to talk about it. Really, she didn't forget that. We may have to ask for more about that later, though. Speaking of Uncle Jim, did you know that she talked to her brother on the phone every night at 8 p.m.? She would make a bowl of ice cream, always chocolate for Grandma, and sit on the phone talking with him. During the summer, they would have the KC Royals game on in the background and would talk about nothing and everything. Could you imagine talking to your brother every night? Alyssa, you and Nolan going to talk every night? Jody, you and Jamie going to talk every night? Colleen, you and your brothers? Katie, don't worry, ain't happening with us. So I mentioned that Grandma would have the KC Royals on when she talked with Uncle Jim. She did become a Royals fan in her later years, but she was a Chicago Cubs fan for life. Some of us were lucky enough to go on trips to Wrigley with Grandma and Grandpa. The Cubbies probably lost on those trips, but they were fun trips regardless. Grandma was very proud of the fact that her nephew Danny Foral, my sister Katie, and I were able to see the Cubs play in Game 4 of the 2016 World Series. Allison, it's time to let it go. I did it for Grandma. It's what she would want. And let's not forget, special night, 4 years ago today, Cubs won the World Series. Over the years, many of us were fortunate enough to spend some quality time with both Grandma and Grandpa by taking them to the grocery store. I know I enjoyed the times that my kids and I were able to spend with them doing this mundane task on Friday mornings. Virginia remembered getting gummy worms or peach rings as a treat when we went with them. Pat and Mariana were also able to get this quality time in with them as well. Same with Colleen. Now, Colleen was able to tell me a story I'd never heard before. One time, as they were leaving the house to go to the grocery store, Grandpa fell and landed on Grandma's flowers outside. Now, Grandma was so concerned about her flowers. She said some not nice things to him because he was ruining her beautiful flowers. This also reminds me of how happy she would be when Grandpa would go hunting. She would encourage him to stay away as long as he wanted. What a good wife. Many of us were also lucky enough to have Grandma as our daycare provider. Sometimes this involved trips to the zoo with them. Alyssa remembered that her and Ellie had a pink little brush on the porch that they would have to use before leaving the house to go somewhere with Grandma and Grandpa. Grandma always made them brush their hair, and they had to be sure to get the underside. We can all also vouch for the fact that Grandma made the best scrambled eggs. We all tried to recreate how she did this, but we just couldn't quite get them right. And we'd also get chocolate malts or ice cream cones at her house. And we have all probably eaten at least 10,000 ices in our life. Grandma was also the best at throwing batting practice. Joey would beg her every day to go out in the backyard and throw wiffle balls to him, and she would always do it. Now, Joey did win a state championship in baseball, so it was obviously worth it. Not sure what happened to Nolan and Lou. Those of us who went to Assumption also got to see Grandma at recess time. If the weather was nice, she would be outside watching us while she was working in the yard. Our friends knew who she was, and the younger cousins' friends also got to know her sidekick Reba as well. Only if they threw the ball to her, though. Reba, not Grandma. Grandma was also great at writing us letters. When you went away to college, sorry, John, Grandma would send you a letter every week. This letter also contained a $5 bill in it, which was handy for buying a Subway sandwich or cigarettes. Mariana wrote Grandma a letter last week where she said that she cherished that memory and still has many of the letters Grandma wrote. I think we all still have those letters somewhere. If not physically, at least up here. There are so many memories to share that I would really need about 8 hours of your time to share them all. So I'm just going to do a speed round here. Grandma lighting candles for us every time we traveled somewhere. Her walking into St. Agnes with a bouquet of flowers for my wife, Allison. She delivered them for me because I probably got them free from John. Her being a role model for her children. Aunt Lori even followed in her footsteps by being crowned the May Queen at St. Agnes. Chocolate donuts, mainly for Ernie, and Sunny D for the great-grandkids on Sunday, and special sippy cups that she bought. Grandma coming to watch her grandkids bowl in league play. Grandma listening to her police scanner. She's sometimes worried that certain calls might involve her grandkids. Looking at you, Jake. With the exception of a short amount of time in Texas and a brief stay at her father-in-law's place up on Deer Park Boulevard, Grandma lived in 2 houses her entire life, both right next to each other. She was able to live next door to her parents for most of her life. While some of us may cringe at that thought, this was something she was very thankful for. It's worth pointing out that the neighborhood did change over the years. The last few years of her life, she did complain about the neighbor to the south of her. But this didn't keep Grandma from traveling all over the United States. When she was little, the family would take trips to Colorado to see relatives. Besides trips to Chicago, her and Grandpa also traveled to D.C. and New York, along with numerous trips to California to see Uncle Rick. Then later to see Mike and Pat as well. It was in California that many of us had our only real negative experience with Grandma, when she tried to sing the Husker fight song at Uncle Rick's wedding. It was brutal. But she always came home. Home is where the Sunday dinners were and where holidays were celebrated. What kind of family actually enjoys getting together almost every Sunday? We do. And it's because of the love that they, Grandma and Grandpa, had for us. Grandpa once told me that he and Grandma had originally planned to retire to Wahoo. But that didn't happen because family was here. They would run the risk of missing out on baseball games, plays, dance recitals, basketball games. This was home. Even when we had to pause getting together because of this stupid pandemic, we switched to Zoom meetings I still can't believe we got Grandma on a Zoom meeting. We all owe so much to her, and Grandpa too, for how big a part a family is in our life. We all like hanging out with each other, and all the credit goes to them. Some of the women who married into this family have said that this is a quality that makes us men even more attractive. Right, Allison? Right? Even though we are all thankful for everything that Grandma did for us, she was also thankful for her family. A couple of days ago, her children found a note. In it, she thanked them for all the happiness they brought her. She said she couldn't believe she raised such thoughtful kids. I think you were in 2 on that, Tom. Her best line in the note is where she said that her kids raised wonderful grandchildren. Can't deny that. Now, the note wasn't dated, but she also included a message for Grandpa as well. She said that the good times outnumbered the bad times so much more. That may be debatable. Jamie asked a good question. Is it the hardest because Grandma Foral is the last grandparent for some of us, or because of how much she taught us? It's both. But we can be happy that she's with Great Grandma and Grandpa Sullivan, Aunt Terry, Grandpa Foral, and especially Uncle Rick. There will be no more Sunday dinners with you, no more holidays, no more Plover State Parks with you, but we will always cherish the memories. We will miss you, Grandma. Woo. But it's time for all of us to say to you, Span and Bohem. Thank you.